This week we have a little bit of a special surprise for you guys. It's going to look a little different. We have 4 episodes from Matt Stromberg, who is one of the Go workers at Faith Community Church. And funny story, I've known Matt Stromberg for pretty much my entire life. And believe it or not, at a summer camp one year, I accidentally broke his arm. Yeah, you'll have to ask him about that sometime. It's a really cool story, actually. All right, well, enjoy Matt, and we will see you guys afterwards with question time with Jared.
Hi, I'm Matt Stromberg, and I want to talk to you about Matthew chapter 16, verses 13 through 19, and the Son of the Dove. So let me start off by reading Matthew 16, verses 13 through 19. Go ahead and pull out your Bible and read along with me. Now, when Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say that the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and others say Jeremiah or one of the prophets." He said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" Simon Peter replied, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosened in heaven." So this scene of going to Caesarea Philippi and asking who people say the Son of Man is, and Peter saying that Jesus is the Christ, all of that is in Matthew and in Mark and in Luke. And as well, the rest of chapter 16 of what Jesus says after this confession is also in Mark and in Luke. But that scene in chapter 16, verses 17 through 19, where Jesus is replying to Peter and he's giving him more explanation. He's talking about the gates of hell and about him being Peter, the rock, and being Bar-Jonah, son of the dove. All of that is only in Matthew. So we should know, to get the best information out of this, we have to consider that 17 through 19 is specific to Matthew's emphasis to Matthew's original audience. So who is Matthew's original audience and what was he emphasizing? So Matthew's original audience was Roman-occupied Israel. These were angry people. These were people that were ready to kill an oppressive government. We know that because they had already tried to do it. Once in Peter's lifetime, there's already been a rebellion against the Roman government from Israel that had failed. So people had already fought and died and lost. So there wasn't an agreement. They didn't come to a conclusion, say, okay, we're at peace with each other now. This was, we tried, we didn't kill enough people, we lost, we were killed. And this is kind of Israel's waiting for another chance to do this again. And they do get another chance to do this again. Within Peter's lifetime, there was actually another rebellion that was even bigger, and a lot more people died. So we should know that with this original audience who got verses 17 through 19, that it's to an audience that was very, very angry against this repressive government and was ready to kill. And it's also worth noting that many Jews wanted the Messiah to come and lead a violent rebellion against the Romans and take political leadership away from the Romans and allow Israel to have their own sovereignty with the Messiah as the king. And it seems like Peter may very well have had that same understanding, that same hope of the Messiah, and specifically with Jesus now being here, with Jesus specifically coming and killing Romans and being in charge of the kingdom of Israel and allowing the Israelites to have their own political freedom under him as a king. And that would explain a little bit why Peter would have a sword at the time of Jesus' arrest, and why Peter protects Jesus with a sword, protect in quotes, because of course Jesus didn't need his protection. As soon as Peter injured somebody with a sword, Jesus immediately went and healed the one person that was injured with the sword. But all that said, you can see that Peter was ready with his sword and saying, "I'm ready, let's do this rebellion, I want to do this." And that plays a little bit into why I think you can see Bar-Jonah being given as a title in 17. Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah. Now, Bar Jonah would literally mean son of the dove. Obviously, Jonah is also a very specific reference from the Old Testament, and Jesus has already mentioned Jonah twice in the book of Matthew, once already in chapter 16. So Bar would mean son of. Jonah would mean dove. Now, dove would be a sign of coming peace. A dove coming would be a sign of peace coming, of restoration coming. And you can definitely see that Jonah had that name for a reason. Jonah the prophet had the name dove because he was a dove. He was a sign of coming peace and restoration for at least a season. And Jonah was an unwilling dove. Jonah did not want to be a dove. He did not want to come and preach peace. He did not want things to be restored. He wanted to be a messenger of death. He wanted to fly in, say, "You're all going to die, Nineveh, goodbye," fly out, and then watch the city burn. And he was very disappointed when he got out of the city and just sat and waited, and it was never destroyed. So is Peter's dad's name Jonah? Yes and no. Peter's dad's name is John, which would mean peace. So there is a linguistic similarity between John and Jonah. So it would be kind of choosing a nickname over another name. But Peter also gets a nickname that's supposed to be very symbolic within this same chapter. So clearly, names are important. Jesus is saying names to create an emphasis and to make points. He's calling him son of Jonah for a point instead of calling him son of John. So, like Jonah, Peter did not want to be a dove. Peter wants to be messenger of death. He's carrying a sword right now. He wants to pull out his sword, attack some Romans, kill Romans off, and go, "Jesus, you're king now. We did it, woo-hoo." But he was not to fight Rome. He was to be a messenger of peace. He was supposed to come and preach the gospel and bring restoration. He was supposed to fight the gates of hell, which in this context very much means fighting sin and fighting the consequence of sin, which would be an eternity in hell. Rome was not the enemy. Sin was. Peter was being raised up to fight sin and be this messenger of how to fight sin and help establish the church. So sin would be defeated by the church after Peter and others proclaimed the gospel.
All right, very cool. Thank you, Matt. Matthew 16 is so cool because it really shows you and shows us how important the disciples are for the foundation of the church. And Paul in Galatians 2 verse 9 says that, hey, these guys are the pillars of the church. So what they say carries a ton of weight. And that's partly what makes Matthew 16 verse 16 so important, because whenever Peter answers Jesus and says, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God," it is this incredible testimony because Peter believes that Jesus is both God in the flesh and the long-awaited Messiah. And so all who Jesus is and all that he's done, that is the foundation. And that is the bedrock upon which the entire church is built. The church is built upon the gospel, upon the good news of Jesus Christ. And when we understand Matthew 16, a lot of other texts make sense. And a good example of this is this text right here, Ephesians 2, verses 19 through 22. And so our challenge time with me, Jared, is for you just to read those verses and discuss them together. We'll see you tomorrow.